mostly like we do like a lot of fashion and jewelry and apparel and
Yeah, yeah.
Snapchat work and stuff like that.
Some more higher margin items, I assume.
Yeah, yeah, probably mostly that. But yeah, the same general thing, just with more verticals now.
Yeah, no, that's smart. Kind of what I was thinking about too in the flailing months of this startup. But
But
yeah, looking forward to it.
I did know Menu 3. Were you guys out of, what was it, San Francisco or I can't remember.
Well, we presented ourselves as a tech startup, but we were mostly in Chicago area. But
Uh,
you said you did hear of us back in the day?
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Nice.
it wasn't a big world.
Yeah, I actually just noticed, yeah, Kabak and us were started at the same time in summer of 2017. So
Hmm.
it was a wild west back then, and not a lot of people are doing what we were doing.
No, still not that many, but more.
Yeah,
It's weird to think that that was that long ago. That was 2017.
I know. Yeah, the industry has gone so much since then. Like I see augmented reality on billboards sometimes now. I'm like, wow, this is new.
Yeah, I mean, we did, we talked actually, we did a thing with JC with that um, early, like 2018. But the big thing was, okay, we'll do that for walking billboards, like, the ones that are on the street corners in Chicago. Putting AR against a driving billboard, one of the ones that's up against the expressway, I'm like, can we really not do that? That just doesn't strike us as a good, safe thing to do.
Dangerous. That's very dangerous.
So yeah, it was that was one of those things that came up a few times. But yeah, we did it. We did it against digital billboards, the ones that are in downtown Chicago, a couple times. So that makes it fun. Everyone else is sitting and hanging out. I don't know if spatial audio on it must be mute audience.
Actually, Matthew, can you tell me a little bit more about VRAR Chicago? I talked to Tom a little bit about it, but I'd love to hear more.
Sure. So VRAR Chicago started in 2017, actually, also. It basically, I had been working in the space for a couple of years at this point by the time I started this, and was kind of reaching out to try and figure out who the developer community was in the area. And there were, at the time, there were a couple of different immersive technology meetups and things that were happening. But a lot of them very much seemed like, you kind of go, it's like pay to pitch events basically, where it's like, okay, I'm going to go put my product in front of an audience and talk about myself a lot. And I was looking more for an event that was there to help people who were trying to figure out what to do, And so I ran a meetup myself. I ran an event at 1871, the first one. And the focus was, again, it was meant to be very informal, and it was meant to be very much, if you're trying to use the technology, we're here to help. Like we're here to answer questions. We don't care if you're a technology person looking to figure out how to break into an industry with the tech, or if you're an industry person trying to figure out how to use the tech. And that sort of was the starting point. And so for the first year, we actually ended up bouncing around location a lot. But the whole point of this event was always, for the first several years, it was very much anyone who wants to use immersive technology or get used to using immersive technology, whatever your next step forward is, we're here to help you take it. And now for the first couple of events, for the first several events, almost the entire first year, for a lot of our audience, that was literally, they're trying VR for the first time. So we always had a demonstration. We always had a couple of headsets set up. We always had some VR experiences for people to just try it, because that was the big hurdle early on.
Right.
And then by the second year, I'd say 70% of our audience had at least tried VR at some point. Whereas, I think the second event was the one that we did where there's about 20 of us in a room at FinTech, and the 4 people on the panel, we're all technical, and we're all answering very technical questions and talking about very technical things. And finally, the audience starts asking us some questions. We're just like, "Have you guys tried VR?" And it's like, okay, wait a second, we're gonna stop. Like, if you haven't ever tried VR before, can you raise your hand? And so like pretty much everybody except for one person in the audience did. And we're like, okay, we're going to stop talking now because you're not going to get any value out of what this panel, this very technical, is going to say. We've got an Oculus Rift right there. Everyone, this is, it's like Fight Club. If you've never done it before, tonight's your night. So there was just stuff like that. And then the format evolved. So today, VRAR Chicago, it's an organization. It's actually a company. We do consulting work. We work with virtual campuses like Verbella. We work with events and help them learn how to use immersive technology and how to use web platforms. And, when we shifted to fully virtual online at the start of the pandemic, we did it really well, according to a lot of people. So they started asking us how to do it, and we were consulting on that. But ultimately, the main mission of the organization is just to help anyone who's trying to use this technology, use the technology. Find the benefit. Whatever you need to figure out, take your next step. Oh wow! Hello, Juji. We have a Facebook viewer from Australia. This is I don't know technically who is farther. Would it be Australia or New Zealand? Because we actually had a presenter live from New Zealand once, and I'm not entirely sure which one would be farther from Chicago. But thank you for joining us. This is one of our Facebook viewers posted.
I would guess Australia personally.
Is it? I'm not sure.
Because I think New Zealand is east of Australia, so.
Yep, that's right.
But anyway, Mike, I'm happy to answer any other questions about VRA or Chicago. Juji's
right.
Not sure.
And so I assume it's still a similar mission, right?
I mean, the mission is still to help everybody, still to help anyone who's trying to use immersive technology figure out how to do it and get the best benefit out of it. With that, we actually partner with a lot of organizations. There's some pretty cool news coming out in the next month, but I can't obviously let you know about it yet because it's coming out next month, or later this month actually. But yeah, we work with any sort of organization that's trying to get help or connect with the right people. So we'll work. The thing I can say about like the audience here, and actually Ben's in the audience. We have people in the audience who found jobs here. We have companies that have come here to recruit people. We've had businesses that have actually started out of our audience. So people have met in our audience and started a business out of it. Yeah, there's like, it's a really cool kind of community, I guess. My business bundle AR has found clients here many times at this point.
Right. And so you said you also do consulting work?
Chris can talk all about that. That's his area.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hello, guys. Yeah, we do consulting on event production, but then we also do just for anything immersive, right? Virtual campuses like this, immersive technology with with the network that we built up just from doing these for so long and everything like that. We've spanned everything, and then obviously a lot of us come from the event production world with having done this, and then the other events that we do. So a lot of the consulting that we do ends up leading into actual event production also.
Oh, so the consulting is mostly on the event production side, is that right?
No, I mean, it can also be on the business technology side with the immersive tech stuff, just because, again, with the software background and everything also, and just from having done this so long, we built up a really big community of people like y'all, right? So, we're not actually trying to, how do I want to put it? We don't actually want to project manage or take the projects ourselves, but we definitely can consult with companies about like what the technology is that's available out there and everything, and then try to pair them with the best, creators, software, whatever it takes, platforms.
Yeah, so to give you a more concrete example, right before, in 2020, before the pandemic, Magic Leap, we worked with Magic Leap. We actually brought them into town and produced 4 training sessions for developers for Magic Leap. We were in the process of doing one for HTC as well and Epic, but obviously the pandemic canceled that one. We got hired by a couple of different trade shows to actually host a session at the trade show regarding, best practices in immersive technology, and we hosted a panel in there at a couple of trade shows at McCormick Place that were, it was not all that different from this format where we had a panel of experts, panel of companies that were specific to that industry, that came in and spoke and presented solutions to that industry for saying, hey, listen, Print Show was one of the ones we worked with where it's like, you guys, immersive technology is not here to compete with you. It's here to actually support your industry and grow your industry. And so we brought in, I want to say 3 or 4 different companies that were there. It's hard for me to actually remember all of that at this point. I'm sorry, blanking on some of it. But yeah, you know, it's weird because all this stuff was so many years ago now. And it's like, it still feels like it was very recent. It's like our live stream dropped for a second here. There we go, reconnected. But yeah, so you know, that's where the consulting lives, and that's where, you know, the consulting will definitely be in terms of, like, we will meet with any company that is trying to figure out what they're trying to do with immersive technology, and if they're just looking for connections to people, we will help them make connections. If they're looking to, you know, educate their company about what are the options and what is out there, we can do that. If they're looking for us to sort of bring in a number of companies that have solutions in their industry and do a roadshow, we can do that as well.
Cool. How big is your team?
Full-time, what are we, 3, Chris? 4, 3 or 4, I can't remember, 3.
Sorry, I was muted. That's why we're technology consultants, because we don't know how to unmute ourselves for these things. 3 of us are full-time with the company. There's an advisory board that meets with us weekly, but most of that revolves around this event, the advisory board stuff, and then contract work as required.
Right. And most of it's in the Chicago, Midwest area, I think.
Not necessarily. It doesn't have to be. A lot of the clients that we have, obviously, just because of our location, and our affiliation with like 1871 and other local companies, stuff like that. Like, you know, a lot of it tends to be a little more localized here, but
Yeah,
we have
been doing it in
national
Chicago for a
clients
while
too.
too. It makes sense, right?
Yeah,
So
some of the clients are national.
We are at 6:15, so I am going to get us started at this point. And so for those of you who are in the audience, this looks like we have a whole lot of, yeah, we don't have a whole lot of people in the live room today, although we'll see some people trickling in, I'm guessing. But with that said, I'm going to really quickly mute the room and welcome everybody. For those of you in the Facebook Live audience, wow, looks like we're having some Facebook streaming issues today. I'm not too happy about that, honestly. Seems like Facebook is cutting out every few minutes. But those of you who are on Facebook, thank you for joining us. Those of you who are in the room, thank you for joining us. At this point, I am going to change the seating configuration to the lecture seating so that we have desks and tables for people to sit at. And I will get the event started. For those of you who have not been here before, welcome. This is VR Air Chicago. We are here to help you take whatever your next step forward is within using immersive technology. We don't care if that is that you have to meet somebody. We don't care if you want to learn more about the technology itself, or if you are just looking to make a connection. Anything that we can do to help you take your next step forward, please let us know what that is. We're here to help. And once again, welcome to my Facebook audience. I see Francis, I see Juji. I don't know who the others that are watching live are. I can see that there's more people watching, but I don't know who you are, so please say hello. We will interact live with the audience in Facebook during the event, so there will be a Q&A session. But the way the event's going to go is I'm going to say a real quick welcome message from myself and some of our sponsors. It looks like at least 1 or 2 of our sponsors are in the room to say hello as well. And then we'll get started with our panel. So for those of you who don't know, this is being recorded, so it will be live on our Facebook page from this point forward. We do end up having a lot of views, hit these videos after the fact, so letting you know that you will be seen in Facebook in the future. But with that, I need to mention that this event has been going on now for over, wow, that's weird to think about, for over 4 years, almost 5 years at this point. And we wouldn't be able to do it without our sponsors. And our sponsors happen to be Bundle AR, 1871, and Verbella. I don't know, Anthony, are you gonna be speaking for Verbella today? I see you're in the room, or I'm sorry, for Bundle AR today?
Yes, absolutely.
Come on up.
All right, right here, okay?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well tonight. My name is Anthony Colon, and I am the marketing coordinator at Bundle AR. Just to give you a little background of who we are and what we do, Bundle AR is an augmented reality company based here out of Chicago, and we've created a web-based AR platform that enables users to design, publish, and access augmented reality experiences without having to write a single line of code. And when I say we, I'm obviously referring to our amazing dev team and the guys that built the platform. So people like me who have no coding experience can now design and publish their own custom AR experiences, which is incredible. We do have a quick video here if you'd like to play that, Matt, just so you can all get a little more background on what we do.
And I will warn the audience now, this video may be loud.
Until now, creating augmented reality was hard. IT departments simply do not have the expertise, so they rely on expensive developers and one-off solutions. Introducing Bundle AR's augmented reality platform. Bundle AR's revolutionary, self-serve augmented reality content management system allows anyone, anywhere, to easily create, edit, and deploy augmented reality to Apple and Google devices instantly and on a global scale. Now is the time to add on-demand, accurate, and trusted digital information to your communications through a tool nearly everybody already has, their smartphone. Perfect for just-in-time immersive training, learning, and development programs. Easily place multimedia content like videos or interactive 3D models on real-world items like signage, brochures, or packaging to enhance your audience's understanding of your product, procedures, or story. No special equipment or coding skills necessary. It's augmented reality made easy. Visit bundlear.com now to get started.
All right, thank you, Matt. So as you can see, the applications for AR are really only limited by your imagination. So if any of you would like to know more, I'll be sticking around until the end of the event for the Q&A session. So thank you for your time, everyone, and I look forward to talking to you later.
Thank you, Anthony. And with that, the next group that I do have to thank is 1871. I'm trying to see if there's anybody from 1871 in the room right now. There are not any names that I recognize, so I will just tell you all. 1871 is Chicago's technology incubator. Prior to the pandemic, when BRI Chicago has been very closely aligned with 1871, they had been providing us with the physical space that we used for this event prior to the pandemic, and we hope that at some point in the near future we will be able to get back to 1871 to produce this event in a physical capacity once again. But beyond that, 1871 is Chicago's technology incubator. It is the #1 technology incubator in the world, or at least it was prior to the pandemic. I don't really know what those ratings are at this point. But with that said, I believe there were approximately 400 companies based out of 1871 at the start of the pandemic. I'm sure there's still a lot. And one of my companies, I know Bundle AR, is based out of 1871. My company, Origin Development, prior to this time frame, was also based out of 1871. They provide a lot of services and a lot of capabilities to people who are trying to get started and or grow a company. So if you are just someone with an idea who's trying to figure out what you need to do to get started, if you are a company that has started and you're looking to scale, or if you're a company that is in growth mode and you're looking for those bigger corporate communications and corporate partners, the way that you can do that is by joining 1871 and getting involved with their programs. And we work closely with 1871 on a couple of initiatives with some news coming out later this month. The other group that has sponsored us that I would love to say hello to, and I don't know, sorry, I'm noticing that my typing is attempting to move around the room, typing in one of my windows here, so give me just a second. Do we have anyone from Verbella who's going to come up and speak today, or should I do the introduction? I see Travis back there, so I don't know if he's going to say hello or not. You going to come up and say anything, Travis?
I can do a quick hello, sure.
Excellent.
Greetings to everybody. My name is Travis. I'm with the Verbella team. Today I'm just here doing tech support and answering any questions people might have. But yeah, we are an open world or an open access platform mostly used by organizations and businesses for remote work, but also involved with academic institutions and a variety of nonprofits. If you got any specific questions towards the end or afterwards, please feel free to find me here or out of the welcome area. But I hope you guys have a great time.
Thank you very much, Travis. We do love Verbella. They have been sponsoring us and producing, providing us with a digital location to host this event for over a year at this point. And we also actually have our offices based out of Verbella. Beyond that, I do need to thank our partners who help us promote the event and often help us locate speakers and help with some other marketing and production. Those are XR Women, IGDA, the Independent Game Developers Association of Chicago, 2112, Chicago's Creative Technology or Creative Industry Incubator, and VRML, Virtual Reality Motion Learning, I believe. I'm sorry if I'm, apologies if I am getting that incorrect, but they have been helping us for months in promoting the event and finding speakers and other activities that have helped us. These are just basically our production partners, and we really like working with them. But with that, let's get to tonight's topic and our speakers. So we are talking about hospitality this evening, and hospitality can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to things like restaurants, tourism, hotels, cafes, all those places that we go to, effectively to relax and to have food and to just, these are kind of the destinations that when you go to a city, those are the things that you think about what you're going to go to do for entertainment. And with that, we have three great speakers from, across the industry as well as the technology landscape. And I think I'm just going to jump right in and get us started with our first guest, who would be, Christopher. I should have asked before the event, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's not an easy one. It's Gumprecht.
Gumprecht.
But I respond to pretty much everything. In high school, people used to call me Dump Truck because no one could pronounce it. So
that works. You want to join me here? All right. Great. And then doing that, give me just a moment to get out of the way. And go ahead, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks. So restaurants are notoriously slow at adopting new technologies. And as the industry continues to deal with repercussions from the pandemic, many restaurant owners are forced to adapt at a speed that we just haven't seen before. And in an industry that's immune to disruption, we're now faced with evaluating new technologies on almost a daily basis. So over the course of this presentation, we'll take a look at the role of technology and its impact on the restaurant industry, and hopefully get a glimpse at what the future might hold. So if you want to move to the next slide. Perfect. Actually, if we can go one more. Perfect. So the National Restaurant Association revealed recently that more than half of American adults think that we can do better when it comes to technology and customer service. And I agree with that. And if you want to go to the next slide. And from an operator perspective, focusing on the three major challenges to the restaurant industry that we're facing right now, these probably shouldn't come as any surprise to you if you've been keeping up on the news. Labor shortages continue to be the biggest issue that we're facing as an industry, but operating costs are skyrocketing as well. Food cost is increasing at a rate that we haven't seen since 2014. And on 30th, I just a couple of days ago read this article from FSR magazine that reported that 45% of restaurants couldn't pay their August rent, which is incredible. 45%, that's almost half of restaurants out there couldn't pay their August rents. So between that and then, the other thing that we're trying to keep up with is the changing consumer behavior. It's kind of making our collective head spin. So to me, the question is how we leverage technology to solve some of these issues in a way that elevates the experience for the guest rather than just simply replacing something. If you want to move to the next slide. So when we talk about these two guiding principles that I have up here, I'm only focused on what these things mean for restaurants at scale. So to say that technology and novelty have no place at all is, I get it, it's somewhat short-sighted, but technology should not be used to replace service. It should be used to augment it. And building technology because it's cool is great, but we should be most focused on technology that's easy to adapt for the user and for our employees. And in my opinion, being a VP of technology is really the easy part here. It's getting consumers to adopt new technology and new behaviors that is really the hard part. So if you want to go to the next slide. So now let me take a step back and just give a little perspective on all of this. So I work for Lettuce Entertainment Restaurants, and Lettuce is one of the largest privately owned restaurant groups in the country. We have over 70 unique brands. We have more than 120 locations across the country. And we've been innovating restaurants since 1971. And we're now taking that same approach to technology. So it's very difficult for us to find a vendor or a partner that has a product that works for us right out of the box because we're running so many unique businesses. So in some cases, we take a build it over a buy it approach. And if you want to go to the next slide. And so that's where I come in. So I'm Christopher Gumprecht. I'm the VP of Guest Technology at Lettuce. I've been with the company for about actually just over 20 years. I celebrated my 20th anniversary last month in August. I actually started as a part-time server in one of our restaurants. I served and bartended for a few years. And then I got into training and development. I was a corporate trainer for one of our brands for about 7 years. And then I moved over into our IT department, where I managed our point of sale system. I was actually the first person in our IT department. It was very small, the first person to manage point of sale. So I was doing all the maintenance, the upkeep, all the installation, hardware support, writing databases, employee training. I did all of our restaurant openings. And over the course of about 7 years, I built out a team of people to support point of sale. So both hardware and software people. And then about 6 years ago, I moved into marketing, and I took on kind of this marketing technology role, guest technology role. And so a lot of my day-to-day is spent overseeing our internal development and engineering teams. So we handle all of our own mobile app development and website development in-house. And we also function a little bit as an innovations team. So our operators and partners in the restaurants will often contact us if they are looking to do something new and they don't know where to start. And so we'll sit with them and we'll scope out what the project looks like, what their end goal is, and if it really makes sense for us to build that internally. And then as you can see up here, I'm also involved in a lot of other guest-facing technologies that I oversee. So I spend a lot of time doing all of those things in addition to my other responsibilities I mentioned. And if you want to move on to the next slide, I'd like to showcase a couple of the technologies that we've implemented over the last year and a half. So the first one that I want to talk about is virtual menus, which we have rolled out to about 90% of our restaurants. And for us, virtual menus are a digital replacement for print menus. And these are all built in-house for us. So when a guest scans a QR code at a table or a register, they're taken to a branded digital menu experience that we host internally. The look and the feel of the website that they're looking at matches the brand guidelines for that specific concept. The same fonts, colors, photography, button layouts, etc. And honestly, virtual menus have been one of our biggest success. The adoption for it has been great. All of the guests are really accustomed to it. And there's a few things that it brings us in that. Some of the obvious ones, we're able to update pricing on the fly rather than having to reprint menus and ship them out to a store. We have an in-house graphics team that will do that, but we're able to update those kind of on the spot. We're also able to change the layout and draw attention to specific menu items. So if we have an operator or a partner who comes to us and they have an item that they really think should be selling well and it's not, we can pull that menu out and use some styling that feels like it makes sense to that brand to highlight that item. And oftentimes we see an increase in sales, which is what we're driving for. We also have the ability to do A/B testing and see the result of that really quickly. We can include company-wide promotions, which we do fairly often, and we can include it in a way that feels native to the experience. So you're going to see whatever promotion that we're hosting as you're scrolling through the menu, and it's not going to seem out of place or corporate. And then the other great thing is that we can link to events that restaurant is doing. So as you get to the bottom of that virtual menu, you can see upcoming events, click through and actually book. So there's a call to action that can drive future engagement for that guest just as they're sitting there deciding what they want to eat. So that one's been a huge success. And then just in the interest of time, the other one that I want to focus on here is our virtual dining. And again, this is probably no surprise to anyone here, but because our parties and events business was so greatly affected during the pandemic, we started offering virtual dining experiences where a host could contact us, book a virtual dinner, and we prepare individually prepared meals, or in some cases meal kits, and deliver them directly to people's homes, and then host a virtual meal for them through Zoom or another conferencing system. We also we also offered chef-led dinners, so people could sign up for a chef tasting event virtually, and we would host it again on Zoom or something similar. And we would do something very similar to the virtual parties where we would send them pre-prepared meals that they could eat in their home, or a meal kit that they could cook along with the chef, including wine tastings and whatnot. And even though we've seen as our dining rooms have reopened to full capacity, even though we've seen a really great interest in getting back to in-person dining, there's still a really strong demand for us for these virtual events, which has been a lot of fun. And the thing that I love about all of these things that are up screen is that they can all be done without the use of any additional equipment. So all of these are bring your own devices. We don't need to ship a specific piece of hardware or a piece of software to a guest. Is all things that they can do themselves. And then if you want to move to the next slide. And just talking a little bit about virtual reality opportunities. There could be a future, where we allow guests from across the country to be able to book their wedding venue or tour a private dining space without ever having to physically step foot in it. They could put on a VR headset and tour that space and decide if it's right for them. Also, for a brand new employee, being able to provide them a tour of the restaurant, regardless of the time of day. In the restaurant, we are very focused on the things that we can do during non-business hours, low volume and high volume hours. So being able to schedule employee training, regardless of what the activity level looks like in the restaurant, is going to be a huge breakthrough for us. And then in my opinion, augmented reality just provides even more opportunities. There's just a really low barrier to entry, since all you need to do is bring your phone or your tablet. You don't need any extra equipment. And so these provide more opportunities for us at scale. And I think we're going to hear from some of the other presenters here, but just how great would it be to sit at your table, and rather than clicking on a photo to be able to view what something looks like, you could actually pull it up on your phone and look at it three-dimensionally. I think that's just such a fun way to interact with your food. And then also for new employees, rather than them having to go find a manager to find a specific item in a kitchen or learn how to use a piece of equipment, they could pull out their own device and be able to interact with it digitally so that they can learn how to do those things without having to go and talk to somebody else. And then if you want to go to the last slide. And to me, there's no real sugarcoating it here. The last year and a half has been a real challenge for the restaurant industry. I don't see that getting easier anytime soon. But I think that even in bad situations, there's always a silver lining. And restaurateurs at our core are creative and adaptable people. And consumers are continuing to show us right now that they're more willing than ever to change their behavior if it leads to convenience. So personally, I'm just really excited to see where this industry goes in the next 5 to 10 years with technology. So thanks for your time tonight, and thanks for coming to my VR AR talk instead of TED Talk.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Looking forward to the Q&A. I've actually got some questions for you. So we did have another speaker that was supposed to be here, or for another presenter that is not on our list that was hoping to be here tonight. They could not be here due to a timing conflict, so they sent a video, and that would be Skull Mapping is the name of the company. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the videos regarding Le Petit Chef. They were kind of making their way around the internet for the last couple of years, and they went quite viral, I will say. Sorry, give me a moment. I'm looking at Facebook live stream and apparently seeing some issues. But give me just a moment. But with that, I will play their video. Like a lot of the videos here, again, I don't have control of the volume, so if it comes in loud, please, I guess, just watch your speakers. Sorry, give me a couple seconds here. I'm having a little bit of technical glitch on my side. There we go. But here we go with a video from Skull Mapping.
Chers mesdames et messieurs, I am so happy I can finally present my new show called How to Become the World's Greatest Chef. Champagne! In this new 5-course dining show, I will be sharing all my knowledge, my top secrets to make your dishes taste incredible. I'll teach you about the history of food. I'll show you how I am inspired by the world's greatest artists. We'll even travel back in time to my childhood, when I was even cuter than I am now. A little bit of spice. I might even sing a song. Flame the steak for extra taste, but keep your distance, s'il vous plaît. If the meat is overcooked, you'll end up washing dishes. You'll learn to be a chef. Don't worry, we'll make sure we'll have earplugs available. In short, it's a multi-sensory, fun dining experience for all ages, where I cook in front of you, right on top of your plate. All while staying seated at your table. So it's a great thing to do if you're a bit lazy. I hope to see you soon at one of my restaurants. Au revoir, mes amis.
So again, that was skull mapping. And what they had done, in case you couldn't tell from the videos, is they were actually using projection mapping to have a live interactive experience on the actual table at a restaurant while you were sitting there eating a meal. And actually the service of the meal was coordinated with the videos and the projection mapping so that it would be a really fun interactive experience. Anyway, they're supposed to join us today. If you get a chance, check them out. Again, that is skull mapping. But up next, we have Victor Makarski from Menu 3, previously from Menu 3, to talk about his experience developing an augmented reality app for the restaurant industry. And Victor, I think you might want to come a little bit closer to me and join, because as far as I can tell, you are still behind this. There we go, the picture in picture. Thank you very much, and take it away. Alrighty, I learned how to do a wave here. So excited to meet you here in avatar form, everyone. Thank you, Matt, and that was an awesome presentation, Christopher. Next slide. So I'll share briefly here who I am, what I did in AR, VR, and hospitality, as well as a few learnings here. So on the next slide, we'll see that mostly I'm just a software engineer and product person, and I love the AR, VR space. I develop AR solutions for company innovation teams as a contractor. I also lead product at a startup building smart glasses for logistics. And I also have built software for the MIT Media Lab as a collaborator, and also organized the largest AR VR hackathon hosted at MIT every year. And one of the reasons why I'm here is that I spent 2 years in my past building an augmented reality startup in exactly the hospitality space, building augmented reality restaurant menus. So here on the next few slides on the about me, I'll blast through these, but just for some visuals that I pulled from websites, here's the smart glasses startup. In both pictures, this gentleman here is wearing smart glasses while doing his job. Here he's fulfilling online orders at a Walmart. And then the next slide, this was the project at the Media Lab I was working on in the Fluid Interfaces group, building software alongside these glasses that capture brain signals. There's electrodes on the nose bridge as well as on the sides to measure your attention levels and things like that. And then on the next slide, this is the awesome AR VR hackathon that I encourage you all to participate in. So now on to the hospitality portion here on the next slide. So yeah, look at that. New app allows diners to see dishes before they order, and AR restaurant menu to revolutionize the way we order food. All these attention-grabbing headlines here. So this was the startup I founded back in the day in and around the Chicago area. And on the next slide here, really I just believed the menu experience was outdated back in 2017, and still in some ways even now with, the kind of non-engaging, at that point it was paper menus, now it's more PDFs as we go into QR codes on our tables, but really just these awesome pieces of real estate that every single customer needs to look at to make their decisions could be a lot more exciting for the customers. And so we built a popular iOS and Android app that did exactly that, with 3D food that you can place on the table in front of you. This was the early days of augmented reality. So building production augmented reality applications cross-platform was definitely a very interesting challenge. And because food is so low margin, we had to build a lot of custom
software like 3D model generation pipelines and sophisticated APIs that dealt with 3D data. So on the next slide, this was our website for a visual. In the background there, you see a 3D Panera bread bowl from our app that engaged our users and hopefully made their mouth water and made them buy more food. So on the next slide, onto a few lessons learned here. So one thing I'll share is that honestly, we learned that images get you a significant amount of the way there, maybe even like 80% of the way there. You don't necessarily need to add AR for the sake of adding AR. Notice how on the menu to the left, the majority on that recent version of the menu didn't even have the AR icon in the top right. They were actually just regular images. And that was still a significant value add back in those days. And there are other value propositions that you can lean more into, like Christopher mentioned, dynamic pricing, giving restaurants the ability to create a more engaging brand experience with their customers, are all more, if not equally, engaging elements alongside that augmented reality. Also notice in the top right here, there was a photo icon. So I think if we invested in crowdsourcing earlier, including crowdsourcing actually the 3D model creation process, which we had built the tech for, that would have been a good strategy earlier on to invest in more of that type of social features to engage more users in our application. And then on the last slide, just something we learned is that food is very low margin. On the last slide, on the next slide rather, we see, as I'm sure we all know on the panel up here, restaurant profit margins are quite low, and food isn't quite the high, margin item as opposed to, let's say, like a $30,000 piece of manufacturing equipment. You really have to think about things a little bit differently, think about your costs differently, and also think about what value you're actually providing. Oftentimes to sell to restaurants, if your value proposition is to sell more food, you're competing with other potentially cheaper advertising or other brand activities that a restaurant might do that make it hard to be in that business in some ways. So that's the end of my presentation here. I want to thank you all for hearing me out, and I look forward to the question and answer section.
Thank you, Victor. I'm actually going to have a lot of questions for you. I'm kind of curious how much the audience will have to ask. But thank you again. We'll go get the Q&A at the end of the next presentation. But up next, I have, and I've got some lovely last names here that I really should have gotten practice on pronouncing ahead of time. I apologize for that. That is entirely my fault. But Mike, I will let you pronounce your own last name.
Mike,
and
thank you. Yeah.
We'll take it away. And I noticed you do have a lot of videos in your presentation. They will be auto playing and they don't have audio, so you're speaking over them. Is that correct?
Yeah. You can just play them through. There should be no audio to them. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
So yeah, my name is Mike Cadu. I'm the managing director at QReal, and we make what we hope to be the world's most lifelike 3D models. And we also make rad and engaging experiences around them on many different types of platforms. And so we started off in the restaurant space and doing 3D modeling of food. Actually, was the first thing we did. I was talking to Victor earlier. Our previous iteration was as a company called Kabak, just focusing on food. And then once we transitioned to doing fashion and real estate and a lot of other types of verticals, again with the 3D modeling and the experiences around them, we changed our name to QReal a couple years back. And so yeah, you can play the first video. This is actually my baby who I took advantage of in this video here. But what we really hope to do is kind of affect the lizard brain, right? Is create experiences where people can't tell whether it's real or not, and even though it's digital, right? That it still affects you and makes you want to eat it and makes you think that the dish is in space in front of you. And we've actually done a lot of studies with places like Oxford and Newcastle University, which show that experiencing food in augmented reality, increases purchase orders, increases desirability, and increases the overall experience of um, the dining experience. And so maybe the only difference between us and Victor was, and his company was and you can play the next video here, is we never really, we made an app early on, but we focused more on using other platforms that we didn't create. So we really honed in on Instagram menus and Snapchat and using the web as like a picture replacement just on menus and not on an app specifically. But for us, the main technology early on was creating incredibly lifelike 3D cuisine, because if there's a huge uncanny valley when it comes to food, just like maybe with avatars, I guess. But if you get it wrong at all, it can destroy that user experience. So once we could create incredibly lifelike, we call it 99% lifelike 3D cuisine of all different sorts with all different plating, and sure Victor and I have much to talk about the technical challenges of that. But once we could achieve that, we started distributing it through different platforms, and then became partners with the platforms. And so now we partner with Google, we're partners with Snapchat, and we create content on their platforms. This is an example of an Instagram menu. It can live on Instagram. There's like a tab in your profile, and now you can go through and click through all your menu items directly through Instagram. Similarly, in the next video, this is an example of a work we did with Panera, actually, and this is a Facebook ad unit. And so some engaging little content, but then we can show the breakfast you can order with the coffee and the breakfast wrap. And this ad unit was incredibly successful. Actually, we got, I think, 25% of all Facebook users who interacted with it ended up going to a Panera restaurant and purchasing, which in the advertising world is gold. And so we started really honing in on how to develop on top of all these existing massive platforms. Similarly to this, we create Google ad units so 3D programmatic ad units for, again, cuisine, real estate, fashion, apparel, automotive, a lot of different things. But most of it focuses on these lifelike 3D models, which for us, we think are the kind of key to the next generation of augmented and virtual reality, although we mostly focus on augmented reality, just because that's where the kind of devices are, if you will, right? And the kind of headsets can be difficult, and we can talk about VR versus AR more in the future, but we do mostly all augmented reality work. And you can just go to the stat sheet I have on the next slide. And so, yeah, we got just incredible engagement I already mentioned, but yeah, 25% of users went to a Panera, and they spent $50,000 on the ad campaign and got immense returns from it. So it's highly successful using augmented reality food in that way. Once we got food down, we started to do even harder and harder stuff. And in the next video, you'll see what we're moving into now are cocktail menus. And so cocktails offer an extreme challenge to get the glass right and the transparency and the lifelike ability. And anyone who's, you might not have seen glass really on augmented or virtual reality, and that's because it's super hard to get it done, and ice and things like these with transparent qualities. And so now we're putting a big focus into cocktail menus. And most of this is, in general, the idea of like the bloomin' onion or the fancy cocktail, these types of dishes that people see, and when they see it, they say, I want what they're having, right? And so that's immensely important with the kind of new cocktail movements that are happening, to get it right, to get it beautiful, and to create content online on a web page, on your Facebook, on your Instagram, on your Snapchat, on an ad unit, wherever it may be, so that we can entice people to buy it and think it's delicious, and move forward. And lastly, we started to create, my entire team, we mostly hire architects to create the the 3D models we do because they have such an advanced understanding of modeling basically, and they learn it so intricately in school. And so we started making more full environments for this is kind of the newest stuff, but immersing a 3D world within the food experience. And so you can play the next video here. And we think this is really the future of online ordering in a lot of ways, is bringing the brick and mortar to the customer. This is just straight web, right on a website. This will be like a web portal in which, instead of just showing pictures of your food on the website, you can really create a more immersive experience to order through. Again, it all depends on the lifelike modeling to make it realistic and to drive that lizard brain as we talked about. But this type of experience, which is pretty new for us, to be honest, we just created this. We really think is the future of the kind of gap between ordering online and going to the brick and mortar. And I think Christopher can talk a lot about, you can order online, but restaurants have a need to get their brand out and the feel of their restaurant, and make people understand who they are. We think this is a really effective way through a web portal like this. Again, simply just click on it on a website and you can interact on this experience. And so this is a kind of a merging of creating spaces and using 3D food. And we're really proud of it and think there's a bright future for augmented reality cuisine and experiences in general for hospitality. I will leave you there. Thank you so much.
Mike. All right, don't go too far away. We're actually just going to start the QA session. So actually, if all three of our presenters will join me up here, we can kind of align ourselves in a line at the front of the stage. I'm going to modify the Facebook feed in the live stream so that it is not showing a presentation screen anymore. But just so everyone is aware of how this Q&A session works, because Q&A in a virtual setting is a little bit harder than Q&A in a live setting, where we can just call on you and hand you a microphone and say you can speak. We also do have our friends in the Facebook audience to take into account. So they may be asking some questions. If they do, I will read them in the room. But the way that this works, if you want to ask a question, is to please raise your hand in the room. I will call on you specifically. When I call on you, you can unmute yourself and ask your question, and then remute yourself if you would. And if it is going to be directed specifically to one person on the panel, feel free to direct it to one person on the panel. If you'd like to direct it to everybody on the panel, you're welcome to do that as well. I'm kind of curious if anyone is going, let's see, there's always the fun question of either a live event or a virtual event, is who's going to be the brave one that asks the first question. So again, please, I need to sort really quickly. Give me a second. Just sort my list so that it is by raised hands. So that it will, if you do raise your hand, I will ask you to please raise your hand and leave it raised. The list that I'm looking at does order by who had their hand raised first. But with that, I'll give everyone in the audience a second to raise their hand, or on Facebook to see if a comment comes through. Otherwise, I'm going to ask the first question. I see Paula. Paula, can you unmute yourself and try talking?
Hello, everyone. Each of you had very interesting presentations, so thank you for sharing your knowledge. And this question is for each of you, but possibly more specifically for Mike, because I was very intrigued with the last part of his presentation. How will you make your technology affordable for the restaurant owners? Because we all know that their margins are small, and the technology that you're dabbling with, or even that you have past dabbled with, Victor, there's a lot of time and effort, and it's expensive to produce. So I'm just curious to know, how do you scale it? How do you make it wonderful and inexpensive for the masses to use?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. And, most of our business has been with larger chains and national chains and stuff like that. I think exactly for that reason. And that's actually a really insightful question, because there's a lot that goes into creating a lifelike dish, right? And so, obviously when it comes to maybe like to creating a 3D menu item, there's a couple levels of how you can do it. We use a process called photogrammetry, and so that it's kind of, as of now, the only real way to create food in 3D, to get the detail. You can't build it in CG or something like that. And so as of now, we have a portable rig that we can bring around to restaurants or to test kitchens or whatever, and shoot their food. But it's more costly, right? Someone has to travel there. It's a full photo shoot. Then we have to process it on the back end. And so that has been our past, and is a reason why we've been working mostly with larger chains and people like Panera, I should say. And now, with the emergence, it was really a technology question, and technology that we weren't going to create, to be honest. We're the content creators, and we don't create the scanning technologies. But with the newer phones, like the new iPhone 12 has LiDAR capabilities, and there's a lot of great apps out there that are you can scan yourself and create pretty good 3D models. For food, it doesn't work like straight out of the box. Like, you can't just use your own phone to do it and it won't look perfect. But the amount of cleanup that we have to do on it is far lower. So we're now creating solutions that can be user generated, if you will, with our lighter cleanup, to make it look, as I said, kind of perfect, and get over the uncanny valley, I guess, through the uncanny valley would be. But that stuff is pretty new, and not many people have the iPhone 12 still. It's a lot of people here still might have a 6 or something like that. But when there's a reason why there's so many cameras on the back of phones, and that's because all of these companies understand the need for understanding depth sensing and things that are really important for scanning. And so the less expensive solutions are coming, but aren't there today, I think, is the real answer. Although I think Victor might have some insight as well.
Sure, I think it just comes down to what the technology can allow for today and what can't. Like, even to the level of, writing out all the different food and menu items that could exist in the hospitality environment. From a burger to a cocktail with a glass. As Mike mentioned, that's more challenging. So scalably creating that without, potentially a small army of architects to fine tune and make it look great is going to be an issue. But thankfully, for photogrammetry based 3D model generation, you can do it fast and in a pipeline method. Like, you can actually create, at least I did this years ago, so I think you still can, fully automated 3D creation from essentially almost taking a video around the food item and separating out the frames, removing any blur. And so that's a 30-second video that can turn into a 3D model in a few hours if you build the right pipeline. So that's pretty scalable, I'd say. And it's cheap because it's just, AWS computing costs. So you can get pretty scalable for a good amount of what you can sell more of. Also, another angle is you can just cut down on what you're promoting. Also was mentioned by Mike, was promoting just a single food item for Panera. And that's great because you engage people heavily towards that one item. And if you just sell more of that one item, you're still, happy. You're still bringing customers in the door, and you're still driving positive ROI in that case as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We do a lot of like specials work, not necessarily, we don't start with a full menu, if you will. I think that's a really good point.
Chris, you want to add anything to how restaurants can afford this technology?
Yeah, I was actually going to say something similar along the lines of like really choosing the being thoughtful about the items that you choose from a restaurant perspective. We face this even just with adding photos to our digital menus, where some brands want to add every photo of every item, and then it just loses kind of that authenticity. So really focusing on the things that are going to either be your most well-known items or the things that are going to have a really low cost and will drive the most profit tends to be the better option for us.
Like Brian Perkins has a question. You want to try unmuting yourself and talking?
Hello. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
All right. Thanks for having me. My name is Brian Perkins. I'm with the Traveling Tykes Activity Box Company. One of the things that came to mind while I was watching this really great presentation was the implementation of crypto. I'm pretty sure that because of its popularity that within your discussions and in the industry, that has had some questions. What types of things are people talking about in as far as the use of crypto in restaurant in 3D modeling restaurant in this realm?
I can talk about it at least from a restaurant perspective. It's certainly, I'm personally just very fascinated by crypto and where it's going to go. I think it's a little too diverse to be implemented in a restaurant environment. I think we even see, big box retailers struggling to determine how they're going to accept that. And just from a payments perspective in general too, the restaurant industry is very far behind everybody else. We see restaurants that are still struggling to get on just EMV for chip reading. But we do have guests that come in all the time asking us if we accept Venmo or other alternative payments. And I think for some of these smaller mom and pop places, it's actually easier to implement some of those things because you don't have a entire organization that you need to think about how this will apply to. Whereas for us, when we look at the scale of us, even just implementing EMV was a challenge and took us several years just because of internal resources. So I would love to see crypto be an option for us in terms of accepting that.
I'm going to go with the standard, because you brought it up. Like, we do need to remember that the first retail transaction for cryptocurrency was, in fact, somebody buying 2 pizzas with Bitcoin. 10,000 Bitcoins was used to pay for 2 pizzas. And it's kind of interesting to think about now what 10,000 Bitcoin, what are those two? I think those 2 pizzas are worth something in the range of $80 million today in today's value of cryptocurrency. And that was not that long ago. That was 11 years ago. It was 2010 when that happened. But actually, the one thing I want to add to this a little bit when he talked about the crypto, and particularly with Victor and Mike, because you guys are talking about creation of these really high resolutions, really high affinity digital assets of menu items, and I'm kind of wondering if that would be something that might fall a little bit into the NFT space. And the fact that those things could become assets in and of themselves that are relatively unique and kind of works of arts and tradable like that. Do you have any thoughts on that really quick, or should we just move on to the next question?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've been thinking about crypto a lot with the NFT world. I mean, there's a couple challenges. I mean, you need something desirable and unique, basically. And you also need especially with augmented reality, you need a distribution platform, right? So you need a way to view it because you can't just give them it's harder to get them to download an app just to use it necessarily, right? And so for us, most of it, to be honest, has been focused on the kind of fashion and real estate, and which you might think of as like bigger ticket items than a hamburger. But that's not to say that the most beautiful hamburger in the world wouldn't be a great NFT. It's just, for us as just the pure content creators, we worry about distribution, right? How are they going to view it all the time? Yeah, it would have to be on a specific app from a specific company that maybe a restaurant platform or something like that who has an app and you can only open it through there or something. But those are the challenges with augmented reality, NFT usage, and creating something that has a one-of-a-kind nature. And so that's why we've been focusing kind of outside of the food space, but that's not necessarily the future, because we're not experts at predicting the future, I would say.
Anything you want to add, Victor, or should I move
on? I think great answers so far. But I don't quite get the NFT element, because you are typically creating a 3D model of a food item. Like we mentioned, the most scalable method is to create models of existing food items that are in front of you using a process, not creating like original food from scratch. So yeah, I mean, it's food. Like you typically buy it at a restaurant. It's not like one of a kind.
Copy that. So a question from Facebook from Paula is, do you find certain age groups are more receptive than others to using VR or AR in the dining experience?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. In so many experiences with building Menu 3, we would go into a restaurant, sit down with the owner or the general manager there, and they would just be like, what the heck are you doing here? This doesn't make any sense. I don't know why anyone would use this. Whereas if you go to people that just generally tend to be younger, their eyes will widen. They'll say, oh my God, I can't believe this makes me want to buy this food item. So it's a very interesting contrast, at least I've seen anecdotally.
Yeah, I mean, we ran some studies on it with kind of a larger N, although we found the same thing anecdotally, but once people got the hang of it, the age didn't tend to matter. We did a big study with Oxford, and that's what we thought would come out of it, but it turned out, if a server can present it and show it, and this was using AR on a tablet, which isn't necessarily the future. I think it's more QR code driven on a virtual menu. So again, it's a little different than how I think the future of AR in a restaurant will work. But they didn't find that there was age differences with the technology usage. My 7-year-old mother is the most avid Facebook and Instagram user of our family. You know what I mean? I think it can be adopted pretty quickly, but there is a necessary understanding from the user, although it can come pretty quickly. But that was surprising to us, and I think, like Victor, we didn't see it anecdotally as much. But I feel like once you get the hang of it pretty quickly, you're going to understand how to do it. The question is whether you want to do it or not. And that study didn't find that it was a factor, but I have a sneaking suspicion it would be more of a younger audience who would take it up quicker.
And I think go along with age and generational differences is actually also location. We just have such a variety of restaurants in different markets. We find people in urban areas tend to be more adaptable to technology. So some of our urban stores, just even things like rolling out virtual menus was a much easier process than it was in some of our suburban locations. And we find that even with our mobile app, just a lot of older folks, we tend to talk to more older folks on the phone, just even walking them through how to download and use a mobile app than we do younger people. So I certainly think those two things combined can affect it.
All right, we got two kind of related questions. One was early on from Francis, and now a new one from Juju, which has been, if there's any thought of linking kind of sustainability and hospitality using this technology. So, thinking like not just presenting the food as in, okay, here's the food, here's a 3D model of the food, but telling the story of the food, like telling the background of it, that it's a sustainable farm, that it's chemical free, that it's, locally sourced, things like that. Have you guys considered that as, something that would potentially add to the story and add to the experience?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, not pictured here, but we did another campaign with Panera in which they would showcase the different ingredients, and then we put what we call the IMAX screen. We put kind of a video playing in space, but behind it, and showcased where they were farmed from, and you could click on an item and see um, where it was sourced, and so that's an example of kind of mixing rich media there. But around, you can think about, you have the central food item. For them, it was a panini sandwich, right? But behind it, we featured the cheese and the bread and the tomatoes and all of those unique items specifically kind of broken out in 3D, and it was a really engaging experience that did quite well for us. And that's an example of the kind of storytelling you can give through augmented reality. Although you have to be quite picky about how you go about it, because it's not a medium that lends itself so well to that kind of lengthy storytelling, right? In a way, sometimes you just want to watch the video, right? But showcasing the food so that they're more interested in the specific ingredients, we found was a way to kind of bring the user through AR into that storytelling element.
Yeah, I'll just bounce off of that. I think as you, at least in my experience, take something that is traditionally kind of a flat, regular, word-based experience like a menu and take it up to a more immersive visual experience, you can do a lot. You can share, exactly, that's a great example. Sustainability, the story behind the food. Like I'm sure we've seen more like impressive augmented reality demonstrations of like, you can expand out a burger, or I believe even in the Starbucks in Chicago, there's even some more immersion around where things are sourced and what's the story here, as well as even some, going down to more basics, some links of if you're digital, you can have links to their Facebook page for the restaurant, or a hyperlink to leave a review, and just more future-facing positive contributions to this engaging experience that all customers will go to in that restaurant, and a restaurant can have the opportunity to take that 30 seconds that they're looking at this piece of content that you're giving them and have it tell a story or whatever you really wanted to tell.
Yeah, I think both Victor summed it up fantastically. The one thing that I would add is that the beauty of some of this technology is it allows people to engage with these things if they want to. And not everybody is going to do it, but you're going to have people that are interested in learning more and building. It helps to solidify that relationship that they might have with a restaurant. And this is a struggle that we face internally all the time, where, when we're even just building a website, there's desires internally of like no text. We don't want any kind of copy on the websites. We just want photos. But there are people that are going to want to read and hear about your story. And I think that same thing translates to this virtual and digital experience in the restaurant, that there are going to be people that will make them feel closer to the brand. So the more that you can give them an experience, I think is just really interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on that a little bit myself, because one of the things that we found, and it's funny that this is coming up in the restaurant industry. This is actually very similar in the healthcare industry, where we're talking with doctors that we've done augmented reality on, kind of the pre-op, post-op procedures when you go into you're going in for a surgical procedure, and you have to do pre-op at home, you have to do post-op at home, and ultimately, most of us have that experience of we're handed like a 4-page, double-sided, single-space type thing that you're never going to read all the way through, and hopefully you don't do something wrong. So we have, the doctor is like, okay, no, we're going to give them a 5-bullet point. Here's what you do day of surgery, 2 days before, 3 days before, whatever. And that's that. They break it down to just simple things, but then they also have additional information. So to my point, what we've been doing here is we've done this with augmented reality, where the brochure is the brochure, but in the augmented reality, the person who just wants, this is all I need to do, they have that access. And then the person who really wants to dig deep and just say, okay, I want to know everything about this procedure I'm about to go through. What's the history? What's all that? It's the same concept with food. You've got the people who are just like, I just want to see it, order it, eat it, and be done. But then there's the other people who are going to be like, no, and I want to know, how it was sourced, who came up with this menu, what's the nutritional value of every, there's 1,000 questions somebody might have. And you got to cater to both those audiences. You got to be able to answer the question for somebody who just wants the quick, what is it? How much does it cost? How long is it going to take me to get it? Versus the people who want the entire history of the ingredients that went into making it. So, it's kind of nice to think about the fact that with the technology, augmented reality or virtual reality, you can cater to both audiences at the same time. And you don't have to worry too much about taking up real estate on like a web page. But with that, Chris, actually, one of the questions I want to throw towards you, because obviously we've talked a little bit about having the food in, for the menu items for the consumer, but what are some of the other places that you see the technology being able to help the restaurant industry just in general? So, I'll throw a couple examples. Yelp used to have the ability for you to just kind of like pull up an augmented reality, camera where you could point it where you were, and it would highlight restaurants that were near you, and you could almost like walk to them, navigate to them. You'd actually brought up in your presentation about having augmented reality or virtual reality training for employees who maybe need to get used to what it's like to walk around a kitchen space and transition from the kitchen to the dining room, or operate a piece of equipment. What do you think is, across AR and VR, what are the real applications of the technology that could help? That, whether it's reduction of cost or, increase in revenues, or I guess anything that would help the industry in general. What do you think is the real kind of golden bullet with the hospitality industry?
For me, and just, speaking back to part of the presentation that I did was, we're facing such a labor shortage. So anything that we can do to, one, get people hired, and two, get them trained more quickly and efficiently is a big win for us. We've been around 50 years, and so a lot of our training is lengthy. And we used to do 5-day training classes for all of our servers and bartenders. And over the years, we've had to whittle that down to be more bite-sized and consumable and easier to do on their own schedule. And so the more that we could lean on a technology to do that, rather than needing a physical person or a resource in the restaurant to be able to do that with them, would be a huge win for us. When I look at it from a consumer perspective, at this point, a lot of it still feels like novelty to me. It's a great way to get people excited and interested, but there isn't a easy draw between that and an increase in sales. There is when you start to look at some of the details, but getting, especially restaurant operators interested in a technology like this, I think it's easier for them to be able to see it applied to back of house, employee training, management training, etc. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was great. So Victor, I'm gonna throw one at you. Apologies if it sounds a little insensitive, but you started a company, the company is no longer around. If you were going to sort of start Menu 3 today, if you were going to do something new with that, or with this kind of concept, where do you think you'd go? Like from what you learned from having run a business in the space, what would your next concept be? How do you think you drive revenue from this type of tech in the industry?
Yeah, I think, whenever you choose directions and then you shouldn't have gone that way, you kind of lose time when you should have been taking that time doing other things. And in the journey, there was a lot of testing and iteration that we did. For example, we started with a full 3D experience for the menu, where you would have the menu be literally on your table and you would press on it. So like, imagine, basically, it sucks because you're tossing at the fact that people figured out how to make two-dimensional interfaces, and like we can press things on our smartphone, but instead you're literally positioning your phone at the table, trying to press on this virtual piece of paper to open up a menu item on the menu itself. Kind of like not the best choice in retrospect from a user experience perspective. But when we launched that and tested with restaurants, there was a lot of learning that came from that, and kind of taking that iteration on and on. Maybe in total, we had like 3 different versions of the application, ending with a more like generalizable 3D creation pipeline we could embed into other experiences. And that's probably where, if I would restart, I would start with. So at the kind of end of Menu 3, what I started was a kind of side hustle venture from the technology of the company, which was something called insert3d.com. And that was in particular addressing a need where, we had our own application, but we thought it would be great if other applications could leverage augmented reality in their apps. And so this kind of came from, we had an advisor who was an executive at Grubhub at the time, and we were thinking, how great would it be if you could drive more conversions in their experience? So I built a lot of, render a 3D model in another mobile app type of experiences, and having the entire pipeline and infrastructure to support that, from the creation of the 3D model of any item of your choice to actually rendering it programmatically in your existing application and having that be an easy to use SDK, is kind of where I took it. In general, I think just more developer tooling should exist around this space. I don't know how profitable that would have been, or even if there would have been a large market for it. But yeah, those are just some general thoughts. Also, I mean, in general, I today build for, Fortune 500 companies that need more of these types of technologies, and that's wildly more profitable than than selling food to customers. So just like a little bit of industry shift for me there as well. But definitely learned a lot, and if anyone's interested, can definitely go in deeper.
All right, thank you. Now, I think at this point, actually, we're probably at a good point where we are going to go back to the open networking. Give me 1 second. We do occasionally have people come in and just walk the stage, and you'll notice that they get booted out of the room pretty quickly when they do it. That's us doing that. That's the joy of being in an open world. But with that said, I think, I did see one more question that I'm going to read from Facebook, and then we'll get going, which was from Brian, who was talking more about, the other thing that you'll notice, or, anyone with kids knows that going to a restaurant is great for a few minutes until they get bored. But thinking about using, I guess, augmented reality in the restaurant experience for kids as just an entertainment thing that they could do. Any thoughts on that real fast is our last question. We'll go right across the line, starting with Mike, and then we'll go Mike, Victor, and Christopher, and then we'll close up and get back to open networking.
Yeah, that's just a great use case, to be honest. It's probably not something we would do because of just the nature of what our business currently is and what we focus on. But I think, I have 2 kids, and when you put crayons and a menu in front of, and like a color thing in front of them, it helps a lot. And we're not we don't give them a phone to play with the whole time. So dealing with the kids at a restaurant can be a hassle, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, creating that tool in AR, there's some amazing tools out there like Jig Space, which I really like, or I think it's just called Jig maybe. But I think if you can make it like even a learning tool, like we showed from, was it Skull, from the video presenter, some kind of like, cool interactive experience like that, I think would be really worthwhile. It's not what we would do specifically, but I would like it because I would like them to learn about maybe food or where it comes from or something like that at the table as the next generation of the kind of crayon and white piece of paper.
Excellent. Victor?
That's actually a great question, because when I started, an initial hypothesis was exactly that. Like, maybe people will be more engaged and spend more time at the restaurant. But just to kind of vividly articulate an opposite side to that point, that actually I came to realize that for many restaurants, their metrics are more inclined to as many butts and seats as possible and rotating that out as fast as possible. So actually, it's the opposite is true, that the faster that they can buy their food and leave, and a new person can fill their seat, the better in some metrics. So that's just an interesting learning that I had that was counterintuitive for me to realize.
Christopher?
Yeah, and I my internet cut out for a second, so I missed the question. Could you repeat it?
It was just more along the lines of using augmented reality as kind of an in restaurant entertainment for kids who, you know, so where parents and kids are taking their kids for a meal. You know, as Mike had mentioned, kind of you give them crayons and a kids menu and they're drawing for a little while, but eventually they get bored pretty fast. Just maybe the concept of using augmented reality as an entertainment for kids so that the parents could actually enjoy their meal.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you see some of the bigger chains out there using things like Presto, which are tablets that sit at the table that have games already built into them. And certainly AR is a great way to do that so that you're not, you know, and one of the things we're always thinking about is how many things are on the table that someone can touch. And so adding more tablets or more things that people can touch at the table is just less of a desire for us now. But certainly having ways that people, you know, depending on what the brand or the concept is, having ways that people could interact with the food or build the food in a way that feels like it's relevant to the brand or concept and not just a way to like keep people entertained. We put a lot of time and effort into the design of some of our places. So a tiki bar is not a great place for kids to go, but one of our tiki bars has just this really cool design, and there's a lot of stuff that has history to it and has come from other countries, and being able to allow people to interact with some of those things and see the history of them would be a great way to help people pass the time while they're sitting at a table. But I do think that the most important thing when we're talking about guests is keeping them within the space and within the experience rather than using it as a way to pull them out of that.
All right, so with that, I definitely want to say thank you to our three presenters, Mike, Victor, and Christopher. Once again, thank you for joining us and for sharing your knowledge with our audience for, you know, this evening and in the future as the video gets viewed. For those of you in the audience who, you know, if you actually hit the little arrow next to your name, there is the ability to clap. You can also press 4 on a Windows machine. I'm not sure how well that works on Macs. But I do want to say thank you again to our audience for joining us, to our presenters for presenting, and to those of you joining us on Facebook for, you know, presenting and participating and asking your questions. Next month, we are going to be doing a panel on research. This is a little bit of a different one for us, where we actually had a number of people who came to us asking about presenting the panel. And so that's the way we're going to be doing it. I believe we have, you know, I wish Tom was here to actually tell us who exactly is presenting, but I believe we might have somebody from Barrio and possibly some universities who will be presenting on VR and AR in research. With that, I am going to, at this point, make all of the seats go away so everybody in the audience can stand up. We will turn on private volumes in the room in a moment. So for those of you who are not familiar with the space, right now, if you look at the floor, you will not see any circles. But when I turn on private volumes, you will see these blue circles in the floor. The blue circles are what are called a private volume. If you are inside of that circle, you can only hear and speak to other people who are inside the circle. If you are outside the circle, you can speak to people outside the circle. But there will be several circles so that we can have multiple conversations going on simultaneously. Again, I will turn that on in a few moments as soon as we're done wrapping up here. But yeah, please stick around and talk to the people here one-on-one. If you didn't want to ask a question live, you know, during the event, you can still talk to people one-on-one. You can also find information and contact information for everybody who's presented with us on the website at vrarchicago.com. We will have this event. This event has been monthly, going on over 4 years now, approaching 5 years actually. We do hope at some point in the future we will get back to having a live in-person event. Obviously, with the Delta variant rising right now of COVID, we're not going to be doing it. We were hoping to do it in September. We were hoping to do it in October. At this point, we're hoping to do it in January, is what I will say. But we'll see. We're tracking it, and we obviously want everybody to stay safe. There will always, from this point forward, be a virtual component, though. So we will always be hosting it in a virtual event as well as live. With that, once again, thank you to my audience on Facebook and live in the room. At this point, I'm going to turn on private volumes, and I will be ending the video stream shortly after I do that. We hope you all can stick around and have some good conversations. So if you want to look at the floor right now, you're about to see private volumes, and as soon as that happens, you will only be able to hear people who are within the circle that you are in. And that is happening in 3, 2, 1, now. And with that, I'm going to walk over and stop the live stream, and then I have some conversations to have with several of you. So thank you very much.